Biden preparing to leave office. So he's going to be giving a speech tonight. According to the New York Times, this will cap his 5-decade political career. Now, it's been a pretty bad 5 decades, if you ask me, right? I mean, Biden carried water for the insurance companies that, insurance companies, yes, and all, student lenders, credit card companies, all of them. He was a corporatist. He was against busing early on in his career, and I have mixed feelings about busing. I don't want to condemn him for that, but he was not at any point a real advocate for integration. Let's put it that way. He was not a real advocate for civil rights at any point in his career. And when he first began it, he was, that was during segregation, actually, or at least when he was a teenager. Never been a progressive. And you can look at many areas where he failed the American public. Certainly the bankruptcy deal that he championed, which exempted, which made it much harder for Americans to shelter debt, bankruptcy, including credit card debt, exempting credit card lenders from usury laws, deregulating the student loan industry so that now so many Americans will die in debt because of loans they took out 40, 50, 60 years earlier, 70 perhaps years earlier. Sheepdogging Democrats into supporting Clarence Thomas, arguably the worst Supreme Court justice past 150 years. Sheepdogging Democrats into supporting the war on Iraq, which has been a complete and utter disaster. Capstone of his horrific political career, the genocide, Gaza, and endless proxy war with Russia. So a terrible political career. There's simply no way to look at it. And I haven't even touched on a lot of other miserable failures. The 1994 Omnibus Crime Bill, which led to the incarceration of more African Americans during the Clinton administration than under any other president in American history. Joe Biden has been, and this is why I do not support recent presidential Democratic candidates. It's not that they're not good enough. It's that they're bad. Okay, so it's not that, I wish he was for Medicare for all, but at least he's for lowering the age of eligibility for Medicare and taking real steps towards guaranteeing every American health care. But no, he's not, right? I mean, his policies were bad on health care. He helped as best as he possibly could, for example, Medicare disadvantage, privatizing health care. It's not as though he pushed Israel to embrace a two-state solution. I think the only viable solution is a one-state solution. He didn't do that. Like you could say, a two-state solution probably would be better, wouldn't be ideal, there'd still be war, there'd still be killing, it's not the right solution, it's not the right solution to the problem, but better than what we have now, or not as bad as what we have now. But he didn't embrace a two-state solution. He embraced a one-state, a hegemon, Israel. So that's why that's why I call for a alternative, an emerging party alternative. And I think it's proven by this record, by Biden's record, how bad it is. And the fact that it's, even Trump, as bad as Trump is, it looks like we have strong reason to believe, at least when it comes to a very important issue, Israel, Trump is making progress where Biden, Harris, did not. Biden giving a speech tonight, I always think those speeches are a load of crap. I don't really focus on stuff like that. I really don't. I look at solutions. I'm talking about Biden now, his terrible record, not because I want to even kick the man while he's down. The point is we have to understand how Democratic leadership has led us to a terrible place, along with Republican leadership, that they're both the architects, or at least if not the architects, they're the builders who, along with the architects, I guess the corporate elite, have led us to, close to Armageddon. Close to Armageddon. If Trump is taking us a little bit back from the brink with this ceasefire that he's pushing, then you have to say this really proves just how bad the Democrats are, that even Trump, who's awful, let's not make any excuse, let's not try to pretend Trump isn't awful. He just may not be any more awful than Harris Biden. And that, to my way of thinking, is proof positive. We have to go in a different direction. All right, here's Biden. This is the guy that up until July of last year was the Democratic, he was going to be the candidate. Clearly, he's lost it.
Mr. President, do you regret your decision to run for re-election? Do you think that made it easier for your predecessor to now become your successor?
I don't think so. I think I would have beaten Trump, could have beaten Trump, and I think that Kamala could have beaten Trump, would have beaten Trump.
So it's so bizarre. I would have beaten Trump. Kamala would have beaten Trump. That's what he said. I think it was last week, a few days ago. I'm not really sure. This is getting a lot of attention. The Young Turks widely mocked this. And I want to give a little bit of a shout out. I've never been a fan of the Young Turks, but I appreciate they're going after the woke, liberal, in quotation marks, left recently and calling out its contradictions and how they, have made apologies to the Democrats and how they failed to hold power accountable. I do give them a little bit of credit for that. I have no problem with them going into conservative spaces. We should be trying to build bridges with poor, struggling, and working class people. They've tried to do that. They are trying to do that. I don't think they've given up whatever values they might have. Not that clear to me that they have very many. So, I welcome that change in their policy now, that they're not just demonizing the right. Now, if you're going to go make excuses for people, who are the leaders on the right, then that's a different issue. And I don't believe in that for a minute. You have to call it bad, evil, wherever it is. But we should be talking to each other. And I give TYT credit for at least doing that. I don't want to mock Biden, for saying, well, I would have beaten Trump. I could have beaten Trump. It seemed clear he was not going to beat Trump. The polls had him down much further against Trump than they did Kamala. In fact, Kamala was leading Trump for quite some time. He couldn't have beaten Trump. He was going to lose. Now, and I don't know that he understands that. Maybe he just can't accept. Maybe he just can't state it. If it's that he can't say it because he feels the pressure of, the political advisor class, which is so pernicious. The partisan advisors are so problematic. You can't ever give an inch. You can't ever give credit to the other side. You can't work together. You can never give them a win. That's what the political advisor class provides. That's endless conflict. No effort, no ability to try to reach across the aisle to make life better, to come up with policies that benefit the American people. That's one thing Bernie has done. Bernie has worked with Republicans to get peace deals through, to end supplying weapons to malefactors. So we do need to reach across the aisle whenever possible. There are opportunities. But the political advisor class says, no, you can't ever give any credit. You can never give an inch. So maybe Biden says, I can't admit I would have lost, because that would suggest there's something rotten in the state of the Democratic Party. We have to always take the position we could have won. Hillary would have won if it wasn't for the Russians, if it wasn't for social media, if it wasn't for Comey, right? It's never our policies are bad. And it may be it's never our candidates are phonies, dishonest, that we need to move in a different direction. We need to become truly populist. We need to become a party of the people, not the corporatists. And Joe Biden can't admit that. So he says, oh yeah, I could have won. And Kamala, quite astonishingly could have won, when obviously she did. I mean, whether she could have or she couldn't, maybe she could have. I think she could have, actually. I agree with that. If she had run a different campaign, if she had run a people-centered campaign, if she had run a working-class, middle-class centered campaign, yeah, I think she could have won. Sure. It wasn't like she was dealt some deck that made it impossible. It wasn't that Biden put her in an untenable position. She was a bad candidate with bad advisors who embraced bad policies. That's why she lost. You lost because you're demented. You would have lost because you're demented.
I thought it was important to unify the party. And when the party was worried about whether or not I was going to be able to move, I thought even though I thought I could win again, I thought it was better to unify the party. And it was the greatest honor in my life to be President of the United States, but I didn't want to be one who caused a party that wasn't unified to lose an election. And that's what.
So he says, we had to be unified. So we unified behind Kamala. And again, this is the kind of rhetoric that, to my way of thinking, proves we need to move in a different direction, that the Democrat Party can no longer be a change agent, that it is a bought and paid for appendage of the billionaire class. And I say that because the party was most certainly not unified. It was not unified behind Biden. It was not unified behind Harris. There were major fissures, most specifically with respect to foreign policy and the opposition by young people, by Palestinians, the opposition to the Israeli genocide supported by the U.S. government. But there were other areas as well. There's a lot of disquiet among the working class population against the war in Ukraine. There was tremendous dissatisfaction among labor. These are traditional Democratic constituents. The Latino population did not embrace Kamala at any point. So the idea that the party was unified is clearly wrong. Unless you view, as Joe Biden obviously does, the party as elected federal Democrats, Congress, because they were united. They all supported her, right? You had AOC and Bernie with those speeches and the billionaires, Pritzker. So the Democratic elites were united. And that's who the Democrats view as the party, not the voters, not rank and file, not workers, not union members, not voters of color, not women. That's not the Democratic Party. Because if it were, then Joe Biden couldn't say the party was unified in support of Harris. They were not. Only Democratic representatives, senators, Jamie Raskin and Josh Shapiro, they liked Kamala. If that's your idea of unified, I guess this is your party. If your idea of unified is poor, struggling, and working people together demanding peace, economic security, decent jobs, education, healthcare, if that's your idea of a unified party, you got to look elsewhere.